Hey guys, it's Matt here, and today I'm bringing you another episode of Matt Rants. And before I talk about what I'm ranting about and start actually ranting about it, I want to give you guys a little bit of an update on what I've been doing this week, why the channel's been a little bit inactive this week. So last weekend I actually worked a speech and debate tournament behind the scenes, kind of helping things run, and it was a 2-day tournament because we're actually getting closer to the end of the year, so we're getting closer to stuff like states, championships, stuff like that. So really big tournament, really took a lot out of me, and I was supposed to have some videos set up beforehand to release during the week. That sadly did not happen, and so that kind of knocked me out for the rest of the week. But thankfully this is coming out today, and also even though I am working another 2-day tournament for Saturday and Sunday, I should still have some videos set up for the next week so that it's not a complete dead zone for Monday to Friday. Or I could actually just, be not as dead. Hopefully I'll be used to the fact that I'm doing 2 days in a row. Usually do is just a Saturday tournament, kind of just a standalone thing, and then Sunday I'm recovering, and then Monday I'm better. But when Saturday and Sunday hit me both at the same time, and my general sleep schedule, I'm done. Usually for at least a good 2-3 days in the beginning of the week. So let's move on to the actual thing that I am going to rant to you guys about today, which, if you look at the title of the video, it is in defense of ports. So what ports are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about ports directly in relation to the recent Nintendo Direct that I also ranted about, which you can also see on this channel, or listen to on this channel. So why am I defending ports? Or what ports am I really defending, right? Why are we getting into ports right now? Well, I knew that there was going to be a little bit of backlash against ports coming out either for the Switch or for the 3DS, because of course the Switch is the newer, fancier console and is also a hybrid console, while the DS has been around for about 7 years now, specifically the 3DS, but still, it's been on for a while, right? So you would think that there's going to be a little bit of backlash here and there, but I've seen a few different videos, and I've also a few different YouTubers, and I've also seen some comments as well, not so much on my videos, but on some other people's videos as well. And so looking at a few different videos, some with not so much backlash, like a video that RGT85 made, which I will link in the description box below, and also looking at a video that had a lot of backlash, specifically for one game that I really want to talk about for the majority of this rant, but we'll also throw in some other games as well. Video by Dreamcast Guy, and specifically he was talking about the idea that Luigi's Mansion, a game that I love, a game that I've played and beaten on this channel, that we actually, one of the first games that we played on this channel, so this is years ago, right? So I really do enjoy Luigi's Mansion. But he was going on about the idea that he was just not a fan that the game was coming out on the 3DS and not on the Nintendo Switch. So I just want to talk to you guys about that and kind of just defend ports. Not so much even just Nintendo ports, just ports in general. But really in this case, obviously it has to do with Nintendo Direct, so we're going to get into some Nintendo ports. Now, before I even jump into all of the Luigi's Mansion stuff, I want to talk about, because I know in the Nintendo Direct rant that I did, I defended stuff like Fractured But Whole. I wasn't a big fan of DLC not being included, but I defended Fractured But Whole, the South Park game, and I defended a few other ports as well. And the reason why I did that is because, look, before I even say why, I have to be completely honest, I don't have a Nintendo Switch. So I'm not coming at this from the angle of, oh, well, these are games that I'll be buying either way. So when I look at something like Mario Tennis Aces, and in the Nintendo Direct I was very excited about it, I was excited for you guys. I was excited that you guys get the chance to be able to play this on your Nintendo Switches. Personally, I don't have that. Personally, I have a 3DS that I actually don't really buy that many games for. The most recent games that I've bought for 3DS were for Not For Resale, which I've been slowly but surely releasing on the channel, and there are some more coming up on the way. Not For Resale, a series where I play Not For Resale games and kind of see if there's some differences between those versions and the retail versions. So those are actually the most recent games that I've bought, to be fair. So I haven't really played much of my 3DS recently, nor have I played much of my Nintendo Switch, because again, I don't have one. Pay attention. So the thing is, when I do understand that there are people who love their Nintendo Switch so much and just want to play all of their new first-party Nintendo games on their Nintendo Switch. But the thing is, and with Dreamcast Guy, and maybe a few of you other fans out there as well, if you haven't sold your 3DS, then I don't understand where there's an issue. That's my first defense of ports, is if you have the system that it's being ported to, then what is the issue. That's the first thing. The second thing is, of course, if you have the original system that the game was on, in this case, Luigi's Mansion, I still have the game. It's a bit scratched up, so it kind of makes me sad. Might have to get a new copy. But I still have a GameCube, I have a Wii, and I have Luigi's Mansion. So if I wanted to bust it out, I can just bust it out there. Now, I know Nintendo Switch is portable, but again, so is the 3DS. So if the 3DS is portable, just like the Switch is portable, I would argue even based on size, the 3DS is more portable, but still, both are portable. So if you have both, then why is it such a big deal that you're only going to be able to play it if you want on the 3DS rather than on the Nintendo Switch? Now I know you bought your Nintendo Switch, it's obviously more recent, and you bought it because you want to use it. Right? So of course I totally get that you want to use it. It's just something that you just bought, but I would argue I'd rather pay budget title money for Luigi's Mansion on the 3DS rather than maybe a little bit more money to try to upscale it to actually have it on the Nintendo Switch. Also, is it going to, because I would prefer having a dual pack, right, of the first and second game. Even though I'm not a big fan of the second game, you guys may have seen myself and Tristan Walter play it for this past Halloween, but just because I'm not a big fan of the game doesn't necessarily mean that, if I wanted to rebuy one of the games, I wouldn't prefer the value of getting them both for 30 to 60, somewhere in there, versus getting the original game for 30 or more. And another reason too that I want to bring up is in defense of these ports, or this port in particular, is that if there's new content being added, but it isn't being made into a brand new game, why port it to your brand new console? That's just my take on it, right? So my take on it is, when it comes to obviously something like Fractured But Whole, and some other games that like Dark Souls and things like that, it makes sense. Even though Dark Souls isn't obviously a first party game, still it makes sense that you're going to port it to the Switch because you do want to pad some newer, some older titles for your newer console. But when I look at something like Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, so that game only came out on the Wii U, and now it's getting released on the 3DS and on Nintendo Switch. Now I know some people would say, well, I'd rather Luigi's Mansion be released on the 3DS as well as the Switch. Not so much non-3DS, but so much more of a Nintendo Switch vibe. Just getting it on there as well, right? Having options for everyone. But I would argue that if I had the Nintendo Switch, I would just rather have a new game, right? Even if it took a little bit longer, I would rather have a brand new game and not have the first Luigi's Mansion. If it was both games in an HD release, okay, but not have the Nintendo Switch, just have the first Luigi's Mansion. And then we skip the second one, but we still have continuity for the third one from the first two. That would be awkward, right? So you would have to release 1, 2, and then 3, or release a dual pack. And I think that I don't know about you guys, right? But I personally, from what I've been seeing in a lot of Nintendo Switch news, when either a dual pack or some kind of port is discussed for a game on the Nintendo Switch, people's first thoughts seem to be, will there be a new one soon? So I personally think that because Nintendo isn't currently looking into making a brand spanking new Luigi's Mansion for the Switch, they think it might be considered potentially misleading if you end up putting HD ports of the first two 3DS games, the GameCube game and then the 3DS game on the Nintendo Switch. So in my defensive ports and my long convoluted defensive ports, my first is I would rather have a budget title on the 3DS rather than my brand new system. 2, even if they're combined, then it'll make it seem as if there's going to be a new Luigi's Mansion on the Switch. Well, granted, I would love to have a new one on the Switch. I don't have one. Again, I don't have a Switch, but I would be hyped enough to either want to go get a Switch or at least be super duper happy for the people that do have Switches. But I would rather get a brand new one rather than getting an HD, upgrade. And then, even worse, if they just plan just to do the upgrade, and then it's years until doing another Luigi's Mansion on the Switch, because then it kind of builds up this false sense of hope. Another thing I want to mention, too, is that it seems like there's this talk of the 3DS kind of being outdated at this point, even though it doesn't necessarily have to do with the ports in overall, but specifically looking at some of the new ports that are coming out. Like we do have I think it was Mario and Luigi, Bowser's Inside Story, and stuff like that. Again, if you're just going to add a little bit more content, seemingly the same thing's going to happen with this Luigi's Mansion. If you're just going to add a little bit more content and not really make a brand new game from scratch, I don't see the need for it to be moved from the 3DS to the Nintendo Switch. Now, again, something like, Captain Toad is, right? It's going to be put on the 3DS as well. But Captain Toad was a Wii U release that I assume people bought, but obviously people didn't really have the chance to buy it if they didn't buy a Wii U. Doy. So because of that, you're going to have people who want to experience Captain Toad Treasure Tracker for the first time, either on the Switch or on the 3DS. Speaking of 3DS, why do I have a 3DS? Well, and not a Switch, let's say, because back in the day, I bought a 2DS really cheap, and then I traded that with Satish Ram, another podcaster, Let's Player that comes on the channel, and it was cheaper for me to do that than to buy a new 3DS, and I don't really have the cash to get a Nintendo Switch. Now, that's not me asking you guys for donations, saying, please give me a Switch, because that's not really what this is about, right? We do have our Patreon as well, but this isn't about you sending me a Switch, and I'm being dead honest about that, because I don't want it to sound like I'm e-begging for a Switch. I'm just letting you know that, it costs money. Right? There are kids out there that are not, going to shell out $300. I mean, you think of yourself as a little kid. Maybe you mow some lawns. Maybe mom and dad, or mom and mom, dad and dad, whoever, right? Whoever your guardians are, give you an allowance. But just because you can have an allowance doesn't mean you can easily save up for a $300 Switch, because at the end of the day, your parents can still tell you no, you can't buy that, even if you have the money to. So, I'm just saying it mostly from a perspective of there's not, the Switch is still new, right? The Switch, it's only been around for a year. It's crazy, I think it's only been a year because of all the hype surrounding it and how much more units it's sold compared to the Wii U, but the Switch is still new. Right? Now, is the Switch going to stop selling units tomorrow? Of course not, right? Is the Switch going to just completely tank, right, in the next year? Of course not. But in the off chance that there are some issues, some unforeseen crazy issues, right? Like some, materials to get stuff in the Switch go dead, and they can't make any more Switches, and they can only make more 3DSs. Which sounds ludicrous, of course, but again, crazy things can happen. Why would they immediately jump off the 3DS pony if there are still people playing it? And people don't just mean you and I, right? Don't just mean people in their 20s, people in their 30s, people in their 40s. If there's still kids and teenagers playing it, if there are still grandpas and grandmas buying 3DS games for their grandchildren, despite the fact that their grandchildren actually have Vitas, but they can't tell the difference because everything is a Nintendo. So because of things like that happening, even if obviously they aren't, stuff you'd immediately think of like, oh no, the Switch is dead. Obviously not, right? The Switch is doing very well, and a lot of people who were saying the Switch was dead immediately the second it was released with no games, clearly they're wrong. Right? But just because they're wrong doesn't mean that we should just take our 3DSs and kind of just chuck them into the wind, just kind of go, well, or have a mass 3DS, given or returned to, your local game stores, mom and pop video game stores, retro stores, stuff like that, or even just giving them to younger family members. I mean, you could give them to younger family members. That'd be great. But it's funny because if you did that, then that would make Nintendo think, well, we got to make more 3DS games. So it's just because the Switch is doing as well as it is, that does not mean that we should stop making ports. So my third point here, if we have points anymore, really, this is basically like whose line is anyway. The rant doesn't matter. I'm just talking to the wind right now to 5 people, and hello, all 5 of you. It's nice to hear you again. It's more nice for you. I can hear you apparently. I don't know. But what matters is that my third point is, just because the system is new and shiny doesn't mean it's going to last a long time, even if everyone's buying them. Now, I love that everyone's buying them. Hell, there's still people like me who need to buy them. So clearly there's still a large, or rather some kind of base that isn't, a user base that isn't there yet, that can actually be there. So the Switch could still sell even more, arguably, right? In its lifespan. but at the current moment, it's sold so much, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the 3DS is not selling anything at all. Also, my fourth reason, and this is something that, and I'm not actually trying to attack anyone personally, it's something that happens to all of us, and it's just something that we don't really get or we don't realize. Sometimes we just get so caught up in what we're doing and, the day-to-day hustle and bustle and all that stuff for us that we forget that there are a bunch of other people who just, their life experiences don't mirror our own, right? So what am I getting into here, right? Am I getting into, politics, philosophy, religion? No, and no. What I'm getting into here is the fact that earlier on I mentioned people not adopting to the Switch, even though it's very, very new. It's still so new that some people may have not adopted yet. What I want to mention in particular is there are just a bunch of kids out there who have no choice, both what they can get, which I know I alluded to a little bit before, but the reason why I'm sticking to that even more now is because, speaking of the kids, think of the children, thinking of the kids, there are some that have never played Luigi's Mansion. Maybe they played Dark Moon, maybe they didn't. So there's no reason why we can't have a Dark Moon or Bowser's Inside Story or WarioWare Gold on the Nintendo 3DS, just to give them a little taste of it, right? Just to give them, something that they've never been able to experience before, because I know that GameCube emulation does exist, but personally, the laptops that I have or the desktops that I have, it doesn't matter if, I have the games and everything, so it's not like I'm downloading them online, but I have the games, and it's just very hard for me to emulate on any of them. Maybe some of the youngins, the youths, their computers are a lot better than mine, most likely. But it still doesn't change the fact that GameCube emulation, to me anyway, isn't as easy as saying, oh, just fire up that Sega Genesis emulator or that NES or Super NES emulator. So when it comes to GameCube games, these are, these ports, these are some games that kids may have never played before. And frankly, having it on the Switch, maybe they'd play them on the Switch, right? I know we're thinking of ourselves when we think of Switch ports and how cool they would be. Believe me, I do get it. But we have to think about the fact that there are a bunch of kids out there who are still playing the 3DS. So when we say things like, well, who really is playing the 3DS anymore? Well, it might not be me. It might not be you. There might not be a bunch of people. But if it's enough people to actually, purchase some new games, I don't think Nintendo would waste the money, even though it might not even be a lot of money, to be fair, but they wouldn't be wasting the money to have some of these ports for 3DS if they didn't see some kind of return in it. Now, believe you me, though, if Luigi's Mansion doesn't sell well on the 3DS, no more. It's fine. You can't port any more Luigi's Mansion. There's only 2. But we will definitely not be having maybe, that many ports or Luigi-centric ports. I guess it's kind of sad to say that out loud. But we wouldn't be having that many ports for the 3DS going forward, right? But another thing, too, I want to mention is that looking at the way this port was... So talking about new features, right? Talking about... So I guess this is point number 5. Are we even counting anymore, guys? So looking at point number 5, or 5 ones in a row. Not a V, just 5 ones in a row. Looking at point number 5 here, there's also, looking at the 3DS, if you guys saw the Nintendo Direct, which if you didn't, totally check that out. And in the Nintendo Direct, they were showing how now the 3DSs will be using the second screen, will actually have the map HUD and some other stuff right there on the bottom half. That's something that did not exist in the GameCube version. I know that every time I had to go into the map, it was just it was minutes, only seconds, but it was still time wasted nonetheless. So if they have that there, as well as a few other cool added stuff perhaps, there was no DLC back in the day for the GameCube, but maybe there's something interesting, something different that they could add to it. I think that it would be a very interesting re-release, right? Versus just putting it on the Switch. And the Switch, as far as I know, if you guys know more than me, then totally comment in the comments below. But as far as I know, The Wii U obviously had the two pads, so one was on your television, one was actually like in the gamepad itself, which actually made it really, really hard to do Let's Plays with. You had to get like a special chip installed into your gamepad. It was nuts, right? But with the Switch, yes, of course, there's a portable version, but you're taking it on the go with you. So you can't have a dual screen kind of thing going on there. So with the Nintendo Switch, I feel like you would be losing some of those cool features. And again, so much work would have to be done. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this earlier on in this rant. So much work would have to be done to upscale it rather than downscale it, that at the end of the day, I don't know if it would be a budget title, right? And if it would be, that'd be great. But again, it would just give people back to point number one or number two at this point. We could flip them. It could be point number one if I want it to be. It's my rant. In the if you end up making this port, of course, at the end of the day, people will think port to the Switch. People will think, are we getting more Luigi's Mansion on the Switch? Like, no one is looking at this port for 3DS and thinking, are we getting more Luigi's Mansion on the 3DS? I have not heard. If you're the one person who's saying that, that's cool. You're awesome. Comment below if that's what you thought. But I have not heard one human being, maybe some bots, but I've not heard one human being say that we would be, that having a 3DS port of Luigi's Mansion means that we're getting another Luigi's Mansion on the 3DS. It's just a nice way to kind of wrap everything together, and that's my last point for this rant. It's just a nice way to wrap everything together because you have Dark Moon on the same system that you have now the original Luigi's Mansion, and they complement each other, and Luigi can ride off into the sunset until the third movie, or the third, in this case, the third game, where everything just goes to hell yet again for the Nintendo Switch. And we'll be very happy with it, but it will still be terrible. And it'll all be, well, terrible for Luigi, not terrible game. Everything that happens to that guy in Luigi's Mansion's franchise, just terrible for that guy. Poor Luigi, man. But yeah, so before I kind of wrap this rant up and finish this thing, one of our shorter rants, I believe, before I wrap this rant up, though, I want to mention that looking at some of the other ports as well, I don't see that many people complaining about Switch ports overall, though, because now we're jumping to Switch ports just for a little bit, not just focusing on 3DS ones. I don't see that many people complaining. Some people are saying that people are complaining, but I don't know if I'm seeing more people saying stop complaining about Switch ports rather than people actually complaining about Switch ports. What I will say to you guys, though, is if you are, really, really, really upset about your Switch ports, getting too many of them, let's say you had a Wii U, or you still have a Wii U, you have a PS4, PS3, Xbox 360, Xbox One. If you do have all those and you've already bought the games, I do understand why you're upset, but I want to say one thing to you guys, right? And maybe it's just me, right? But I just want to say that you guys, you could potentially, just potentially, be happy, potentially, because you're saving money. Like, if Nintendo, look, I would love for Nintendo to constantly hit it out of the park. I would love for third-party game creators to constantly hit it out of the park. But if they do, that's more money out of your wallet. Now, of course, I assume you guys have time set aside to play games throughout your days. So maybe some days when you're off from work, you can play more games. So you're kind of sitting around going, I want more games to play. And I guess me personally, I do feel that way sort of every now and again, but I also have so many old retro consoles that I kind of just jump back to those, or of course I jump back to a plethora of other things that we do, either for this channel or other channels, like, watching stuff for podcasts and things like that. So with all the stuff that I have to do, when I see a port and I think, oh, well, I already played that game, I already have that game, my thought is, great, I get to save some money. So I think maybe if you guys look at it from that perspective, it might be less painful, right? But again, some of you, and also, again, just like I said a lot earlier, right? Thinking about it from someone else's perspective, it's new to someone, right? So playing South Park Fractured But Whole, playing Dark Souls. How do I not laugh every time I say Fractured But Whole? I don't know. Dark Souls, Okami, and a bunch of other games that are being ported to the Switch, like Toad Treasure Tracker. From looks of it, and this is just my opinion, I think the new Super Smash Brothers is going to be an actual, it's going to be a port. Sorry, guys. The dreaded ports. So I think that, there are people who may have never played Super Smash Brothers on the Wii U. They may have had the 3DS version, like a lot of people that I know. So when we look at ports, right? And again, this is just in defense of ports for the Nintendo Direct. If you guys want me to defend them in any other future rants, please comment below and talk to me about it. But in trying to defend these ports, I think my main point is that if it's not if it's not affecting you personally, i.e. if you have a 3DS or if you have the other console that was originally ported on, then you can either just not buy it or you do buy it but you get angry about it. No, that just gives Nintendo money at the end of the day. No, so what you do is I can wrap it up. What you do is you either get super angry about it and then you get less angry and then you buy it. I don't know. No, that's not how boycotts work. I don't know. So as I'm wrapping up this defense of ports, or in this case, obviously ports for 3DS, Nintendo Switch, and if you guys, by the way, want me to ever rant more about ports and things like that, then please comment below and talk to me about it. I can get into more detail with which ports I think are better or worse or things like that. But in defense of these specific ports, I just want to say that, look, if you, again, just as I said earlier, right, as we're wrapping this up, if you have the 3DS and something is getting ported to it, and you don't want to buy it, then don't, right? If you have a Nintendo Switch and something's getting ported to it and you don't want to buy it, then don't. You don't have to buy it, right? I don't consider it a boycott necessarily. You just don't have to personally purchase it, and that's okay. Right? You can rant about it on the internet because, frankly, that's what I'm doing. So why would I tell you not to use your voice, right? Look at me. That's literally what I'm doing right now. But I just think that, if it's something that I get it. Look, you want it for your new shiny system. But there's definitely, I don't think that Nintendo would ever not port something like Luigi's Mansion over to the Switch if it does well in 3DS, and also it's done well overall. I mean, I'm pretty sure Dark Moon sold pretty well, ? You guys can correct me in the comments below. But I don't think that this is going to affect it coming to the Switch, and if it did, then we can have a discussion, right? Then we can totally sit back and say, oh, it sucks that its sales on a system that was winding down affected its potential Switch release. Then we can have a discussion here if those words come out. But as of right now, we're just ranting on the idea of, a port coming out for a system that some people have moved on from. And if you've moved on from, then I totally get you that it's frustrating that you can't play your 3DS, right? With the, whatever game it is that's being ported to the 3DS. But if you have both, then I would say just enjoy it on your 3DS. And if you say, but I want to enjoy it on my Switch, again, I get you, but it's more work. It's more money for Nintendo at this point, and frankly, they can wait on it, right? They're throwing out so much for us. And granted, look, I get it if someone doesn't like Aces or they don't want to play Smash again for some reason, right? I totally get you. But Nintendo's thrown out so much with Legend of Zelda, with Mario Odyssey, bringing ports. I know they're still ports, but bringing Donkey Kong from the Wii U, bringing Captain Toad from the Wii U. They're throwing out so many first-party games that I really feel like if they threw out Luigi's Mansion right now... Hey, look, I got another point at the end. This is point number 60,000. If we throw out Luigi's Mansion at the end on the Switch, then I truly believe that it would fail there more, or at least it would be kind of oversaturated, right? It would just be thrown in with all these other titles, and it would potentially end up looking worse sales-wise there than if it just comes out, which it is coming out, as a port on the Nintendo 3DS. And if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But usually, I'm wrong. So that's not good for this prediction. But anyway, I want to thank you guys so much for listening in to another Matt Rants episode. Please remember to like and subscribe if you liked the video. And if you didn't like the video, you can still like and subscribe anyway, right? You still could. You don't have to not do that. You can still do that regardless of how you feel. I also want to hear your comments below. Do you disagree with me completely? Do you only want stuff for your new shiny, shiny Switch? I was going to say shiny Twitch. I was like, wait, what, Twitch? We're not talking about Twitch right now. But yeah, your shiny Switch. So if you want stuff for your brand new shiny Switch and only that, and everyone who has a 3DS should sleep eternally, then maybe go out Aerith style. Then... right? Totally comment below on what you think. If you think that Switch peeps, right, should go out Aerith style, then comment below about that as well, 3DS users. Personally, I think everyone should live, just like Aerith did in later Didn't they have an update where you could purchase Aerith Living? I'm pretty sure they did. Or was that a joke from the CU podcast? I honestly can't remember at this point. But what I do remember is that I love you guys so much, and I want to thank you all so much for listening. And also, please remember, right, you can like and subscribe. Of course you can. But we have a bunch of other YouTube channels as well. We also have Those Guys on the Radio, and we have TG Productions. Those Guys on the Radio has all of our podcasts. TG Productions has all of our fun little skits, anime-related and video game-related and stuff like that. So you can also check that out there. And if you want to follow them, you can also like and subscribe there. But if you want to follow them overall, you can go to our main website, which is tgproduction.net, our Facebook, which is /Those Guys Radio, and our Twitter, which is @Those Guys Radio. And you could also go over to our main website to buy some of our merch, which is tgproduction.net/merchandise, as well as picking it up from our eBay, which is ebay.com/USR/Those Guys Radio. Also, I mentioned our Patreon way earlier, and our Patreon, if you go there, you can actually, depending on which tier you give to, you can actually just give us $1 just to say thank you all so much for being you and existing and giving us free content, or depending on what tier you give to, you can actually become part of the show yourself. So you can actually, depending on what tier you give to, you can say, hey, Matt, I would like you to rant about this video in particular. I would like you to answer this, these questions in a kind of Q&A for your podcast channel. I would like you guys to review this movie or this TV show or even this book. I would like you guys to talk about your top 5, anime fights or top 5 Dragon Ball Z episodes or something like that. Or you can even have us talk about, we do Keikaku Corner, which is a weekly anime, manga, tokusatsu, video game, even a little bit news podcast where we just talk about different articles every week. You can actually help us curate the articles and what we talk about. And also when it comes to Let's Plays, you can actually talk to us about what games you want us to play, what games you want us to review, and also, and this is the most important, becoming a sponsor. So that's right, we can actually give you guys a shout out at the name of some of our videos, depending on which videos you're looking into, or which video either channel or series of videos, stuff like that. So you can just say, hey, I would like for it to be Those Guys on the Radio, or it could be something like Those Guys on the Radio, like Keikaku Corner or something like that, or it could be Those Guys Play Seasons if it's on our Let's Play channel, or for any of the other shows that we do here as well, just something like Matt Rants, right? So again, as I'm officially wrapping this thing up, thank you all so much. Love you guys. Take care and see ya.